She wore the bracelet I never gave her. It shimmered under the chandelier light, catching glances the way her smile used to catch mine. And as I watched her lift a glass of champagne and laugh like nothing had ever been broken, I felt it, that slow, sour wave rising from somewhere deep behind my ribs. That bracelet wasn't in our jewelry box last week. I would have noticed. I always notice now. I stood behind the ficus plant near the coat check. Yes, I hid. Like some underdeveloped side character in her glamorous life, clenching a sweating tumbler of something I couldn't afford. The music was too elegant for my heartbeat, and everyone around me smelled like success and seafood. She moved across the room like she rehearsed it. Velvet dress, red nails, chin up, eyes bright, too bright. She touched shoulders. She threw her head back in laughter just a second too long. She was performing, and I was the only one who knew it wasn't improv. And then he touched her waist. He didn't hesitate. He didn't sneak it. Just placed his hand there like it had been there the night before. And maybe it had. I nearly spilled my drink. And maybe you're thinking, why didn't I storm over? Demand answers. But if you've ever really been betrayed, publicly betrayed, in a room full of clinking forks and champagne smiles, you know it's not like in movies. There's no dramatic violence well. There's no scene to steal. There's just you, dying quietly inside your rental shoes. She saw me. From across the gala floor, over the heads of politicians and gallery donors and people who probably own horses. She saw me, and she didn't flinch. She smiled, not the way you smile at someone you love. The way you smile at someone who's no longer a threat. She walked toward me, slowly. Each step calculated, like she was counting them. I noticed how her heels made no sound. Even her walk was deceitfully soft. And when she got close enough, when I could smell her perfume, but not the warmth of it, she extended her hand. It wasn't trembling. Mine was. And I said it. I said the line I never thought I'd be pathetic enough to say out loud. Not this time. Not again. Her hand lingered midair, suspended in grace. But I saw the crack in her eyes, the flinch she thought she buried. She dropped her hand like it weighed something. We stood there for a second, maybe 5, not husband and wife, but 2 actors who'd forgotten the next line. Then she said, "We shouldn't do this here." I smiled. But it wasn't a smile. It was survival. You already did. That was the night I finally understood something I'd ignored for too long. Some betrayals don't come with lipstick stains or late-night texts. Some come with silence, polished nails, and a bracelet you've never seen before. She walked away like nothing had happened. No argument, no scene, no apology. Just turned on those impossible heels and folded back into the crowd like smoke. I stood there sweating in a tux I'd rented 2 hours before the event, still tasting the words I just said. Not this time. Not again. They sounded brave in my head. Out loud? I wasn't so sure. I watched her vanish behind a politician's shoulder and 2 real estate barons with teeth too white for human use. For a second, I thought maybe I imagined the whole thing. Her, the man, the bracelet, all of it. But then I looked down. There, on the floor near my foot, was her program. She must have dropped it as she turned. I picked it up, mostly because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. The paper was thick, the kind of print that smelled expensive. Inside were the usual names and thank yous, and then something else. Tucked inside, half-folded and slightly smudged in red lipstick, was a note. Not a romantic note. A list. For names. A time. A sweet number. I stared at it for longer than I'd admit to anyone. My brain did the thing it does when it wants to believe something else. It tried to reframe it. Maybe it was part of the event, something logistical, innocent. But I knew her handwriting. I knew her lipstick shade. And I knew she'd never carry a list like that unless it mattered. And it did. God, it did. I went to the bar. I ordered something neat, though I don't remember what. I needed the weight of a glass, something to ground me. I sat in the corner booth, not because it was empty, but because it gave me a view of her. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She didn't need to. She had completed her part of the play. Hand extended, emotions neutralized, chaos avoided. Now she was back where she belonged, shining, adored, untouchable. But I wasn't in the audience anymore. I was backstage now. And I had the script she forgot to hide. I stared at the names. One of them I recognized, someone she used to intern for years ago. Married, publicly polished, and speaking on stage later that night. Another name meant nothing to me. The third was crossed out. The fourth? That one made my stomach twist. It was the man from earlier. I'd heard someone say his name in passing. Carter. That smug, too handsome, Teuton bastard who put his hand on my wife's back like he was adjusting a picture frame. He was on the list. Underlined. And next to it, 9:40 p.m. Suite 1105. Underlined twice. It was 9:17. Now here's the thing. I should have left. Any rational person would have. But I'm not rational when I'm hurt. I'm slow-burning, weak-spined, pathetic in ways I've only recently come to understand. I don't fight, I observe. I collect. I punish by knowing more than I should, by watching from the shadows and hoping guilt eats them alive. So I left the ballroom without saying a word, rode the elevator up with a couple who smelled like garlic and divorce, and got off one floor early just in case. I walked the carpeted hall in silence, counting the doors. Suite 1105 had a gold placard. The kind of suite used for meetings with mini bars too large and curtains too thick. I didn't knock. I didn't go in. I didn't need to, because the door wasn't fully latched. It was cracked open, and what I saw through that gap will never leave me. Not because it was obscene or explicit. It wasn't. It was worse. It was her reflection, in the mirror across from the door. She wasn't doing anything, not yet. Just standing there, checking her makeup, adjusting the bracelet, rehearsing a smile. She looked peaceful. She looked like she belonged there. I walked away, quietly. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't heave. That would come later. What I felt in that moment was something colder, like standing under a frozen lake and realizing no one can hear you scream. By the time I got outside, the city looked unfamiliar. I sat on a bench near a food truck and stared at my phone for half an hour, not knowing who to call or what I'd even say. How do you tell someone the person you love is performing an entirely different life behind closed doors? I didn't go home that night. But what happened the next morning made everything worse. Much worse. Because someone else knew. Someone I never expected. And they sent me something that broke everything wide open. The email had no subject line. That was the first thing that struck me. Just an empty field, like whoever sent it didn't want to call it anything. Like they didn't want to give it shape or weight, just deliver the damage and vanish. It hit my inbox at 6:11 a.m. I hadn't slept. I'd spent the night walking. Not metaphorically. Literally walking the streets of my city until my legs ached and my shoes blistered my feet. I don't know how far I went. At one point, I was in a grocery store at 3 a.m. buying a banana I never ate, just so I could feel like a normal person doing a normal thing. When I finally got back to my apartment, yes, my apartment now, not ours, I took off my shoes, left the lights off, and sat in the kitchen with the fridge humming like it was trying to soothe me. That's when I saw it. The email. No subject. No signature. No message body, just an attachment and a line of text. You should have known. It came from a Gmail address made of random characters, like someone smashed the keyboard and hit send. I stared at it for a long time. Honestly, I almost deleted it. Thought it was spam, or malware, or maybe just the universe playing one more trick on me. But curiosity, or pain, or both, made me click. The file was a screen recording. iPhone. Someone had captured a thread of messages. Not from my phone. From hers. It started innocently enough. A series of texts between her and a contact saved as C. The first few were logistics. When to meet, which suite, which door to use, even a code to bypass the front desk. Then it got more personal. They talked about keeping it clean, about deleting messages before going home, about how Lowell never suspects anything. He still thinks I fall asleep on the couch because I'm tired. That sentence alone made me feel physically sick. And then came a photo. Blurry, zoomed in, obviously taken in secret. Of me. At the gala. Standing near the ficus, drink in hand, trying not to cry. The caption under it simply read. He showed up. Look how sad he looks, LOL. She sent that. She sent that. I paused the video. Closed my eyes. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I needed to make sure I didn't shatter. That moment, being turned into a punchline by the person I trusted most, hit harder than any affair. Affairs are betrayal. This was mockery. This was cruelty. This was entertainment. I opened the file again and let it play to the end. More texts, more emojis, more versions of her I had never met. At one point she wrote, "He's so used to being invisible that I think he likes it." Another time, "Sometimes I think he knows, but he's too passive to stop me." I wish I can say I screamed or threw something, but the truth is worse. I laughed. It just slipped out. A soft, pitiful little laugh like a balloon losing air. I laughed because she was right. I was passive. I had spent months, maybe years, pretending not to notice. Because noticing would mean confronting. And confronting would mean admitting that the life I thought I built was rotting from the inside. The email didn't say who sent it, and I didn't reply. What would I say? Thanks for the psychological decapitation? I did try to trace the address later, but whoever it was covered their tracks well. And that started a new problem. Now I wasn't just betrayed by her. Someone else knew. Someone else was watching, and I didn't know if they were trying to help me or destroy me further. I spent the next 3 days in a kind of suspended paralysis. I called in sick. I didn't eat much. I rewatched the video, not out of masochism, but because I kept thinking I missed something, some clue, some message, some deeper layer. But there wasn't one. Just the cold, hard, handheld truth. By day 4, I knew what I had to do. Not confront her. Not yet. That would be too easy for her. She'd expect tears, yelling, maybe some noble monologue about love and betrayal. I wasn't going to give her a single satisfying emotion. I was going to find out who sent that email, and what they knew, and why. Because maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one she had hurt. And maybe I wasn't the only one still watching her from the shadows. The first mistake people make after betrayal is assuming the worst part is over. But it's not. The worst part isn't discovering the truth, it's living with it. Waking up every day and remembering you weren't just lied to, you were tricked. Played. Like a child. Like a fool standing on stage waiting for lines that were never written for you. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just began existing in a slower, heavier way, like gravity had quietly doubled and forgot to tell me. That week blurred together. I walked aimlessly, ate in silence, barely looked at my phone except to keep watching that cursed screen recording, not because I liked it, but because I had to keep reminding myself it was real. Otherwise, I convinced myself I made it up. That maybe the lighting was off. That maybe she didn't write those things. But she did. And still, one question echoed louder than the rest. Who sent it? I started small. I printed the screenshot with the blurred contact list and ran it through a forensic metadata tool. The file had been scrubbed, but a few fragmented strings remained in the data stream, just enough to reveal that the device used was jailbroken. That meant it was probably someone close enough to access her phone, or her cloud backups, or maybe even the device itself. It couldn't have been Marin. She would never out herself. She didn't even know what jailbreaking was. No, this came from someone deliberate. Someone watching both of us. Someone with a reason. So I made a list. I listed everyone who had been in our home in the last 2 months. Her coworkers. Mutual friends. Family. Our cleaning service. The dog walker we fired back in March. I went deep. Petty. Paranoid. Every possibility felt both insane and completely plausible. I even considered Carter, him, but quickly ruled it out. The messages didn't just expose the affair, they mocked it. Whoever sent them didn't just want to inform me. They wanted to humiliate her. Someone wanted to take her apart piece by piece. Someone who hated her enough to risk everything. Then I remembered something, a name she used to bring up a lot in passing. Bree. Bree worked at the gallery with Marin, years ago. A talented assistant curator who got mysteriously fired right before a big exhibit. Marin never gave me details. Just said it was political. But I remembered her eyes when she said it, flat, cold, evasive. The kind of tone you use when you're lying to a child and hoping they don't ask more questions. Bree had vanished after that. No socials. No forwarding address. Just gone. But the internet is a stubborn thing. I found her in a comment thread on an obscure art blog, discussing underpaid museum labor and the ethics of anonymous whistleblowing. She didn't post often, but she had a handle at Caravaggio Sleeps. Cryptic. Pretentious. Definitely her. I followed the trail. Found a secondary email she'd listed years ago. I wrote the message at 3 a.m., short and direct. I think you know something. So do I. If you want to meet, reply with a time. Don't worry, I'm not here to protect her. I didn't expect a response, especially not in the morning. But I got one. Her reply came 7 hours later. It had 2 words. Bring coffee. And a location, a park bench, midtown, facing away from the street. The kind of place where no one notices if you cry. So I went. And when I got there, she was already seated. Dark sunglasses. Hair in a braid. No makeup. And when she looked up at me, something in her face said she had been waiting a long, long time to talk. She didn't ask how I found her. Didn't ask what I wanted. She just took the coffee I handed her and said, "You don't know the half of it." Then she pulled out a flash drive from her coat pocket, laid it on the bench between us. This is everything. But once you watch it, you can't unknow it. And she can't unbury it. I didn't touch it yet. I asked, why now? She took a long sip of coffee and looked out at the street like she was watching someone she used to be. Because someone else was supposed to send that email. Not me. But he didn't. He got scared. I felt my throat go dry. Who? Her lips twitched. Not a smile, something bitterer. Her first affair. 2 years ago. He never told you. But he told me. My heart stopped for a second. My brain started doing math, rewinding time, reevaluating every cold night, every awkward dinner, every time she said she was burnt out. 2 years ago. That was before Carter. There was someone else. Someone who chickened out. Someone who left me in the dark, until Bree picked up the torch. And now, sitting next to a woman my wife once erased from her career, I realized I was being handed the key to everything. But I hadn't even unlocked the flash drive yet. And when I finally did, back home, hands shaking, curtains drawn, I found something inside I never expected. Because the footage wasn't just texts. It was video. Real. Clear. Horrifying. And she wasn't alone in it. I didn't open the flash drive right away. I wish I could tell you I was strong, that I was eager to see the truth, but the truth has teeth, and I was already bleeding from the last time it bit me. I held it in my hand like a detonator. Like something that might unmake the few good memories I still clung to. But Bree had made one thing clear, what I knew was a sliver, and what she had given me. That was the blade. I plugged it into the old laptop I kept in the closet, the one without sync drives or cloud backups. Something about this felt like it had to stay offline. Hidden. Private. Like bringing a priest to a crime scene. There were 3 files. No labels. No timestamps. Just 3 cold, anonymous.mp4s. I clicked the first one, heart rattling in my chest like a loose screw. The video opened with shaky footage, clearly handheld. Phone quality, but not random. This wasn't voyeurism. It was targeted. Intentional. It showed Marin standing outside a cafe, laughing with someone. They were close. Not romantic, not quite, but familiar in a way I'd seen before. She touched his arm when she spoke. Tilted her head in that way she used to do with me when she wanted to be understood more than heard. The man? I didn't recognize him. Not at first. But something in his body language scratched at my memory. The way he gestured, the quickness of his hands, how he leaned in just slightly more than needed. It wasn't until he turned sideways, and I caught the curve of his jaw, that it hit me. It was Andrew. My cousin. Not a friend. Not an ex. Not some charming stranger she met at a gallery. Andrew. We hadn't spoken in over a year, not since the Thanksgiving dinner where he made some off-color joke about trading up in life. I brushed it off, thought he was just being his usual edgy self, but now I saw it differently. It wasn't just a bad joke. It was foreshadowing. The video ended just as they entered the cafe together, Marin's hand brushing the small of his back. I sat there, stunned, staring at the screen, my mouth dry, my fingers numb. Of all the people. Of all the goddamn people. Why him? Why someone with my blood? I opened the second file. I didn't even hesitate this time. The pain had turned into something harder, more focused, a kind of silent fury that felt like glass under the skin. This one was worse. It was surveillance from a hotel hallway, grainy black and white. The camera angle high, like from a ceiling corner. Marin walks into frame, room key in hand. She knocks on a door. It opens. Andrew again. Shirt untucked. He glances around the hallway, then pulls her inside. The timestamp? 15 months ago. That was the weekend she said she had a professional retreat in Chicago. I remembered because she asked if I could handle the dog alone like it was some massive sacrifice. I remember thinking she looked especially radiant that morning. I'd even complimented her. Told her she was glowing. She laughed and said it was just the moisturizer. Turns out, it was betrayal. I didn't watch the third video right away. I walked around my apartment in circles for almost an hour. My feet felt disconnected from my body. I bumped into the kitchen island and barely noticed the bruise forming on my hip. I opened the fridge, closed it, opened it again. I wasn't hungry, I just didn't know what else to do. Eventually, I sat back down, played the final file. And this one was different. It wasn't a video someone had taken of her. It was a video from her phone. I knew it the second I saw her lock screen at the start. She had a picture of our dog, wrapped in a Christmas scarf. I took that photo. She said it made her smile when she was stressed. The clip was short, maybe 30 seconds, but devastating. She was sitting on a hotel bed, camera propped up somewhere. She was laughing, talking to someone off camera. She said, "He's too loyal. That's the problem. You can get away with anything if someone's used to being forgotten." Then she laughed again, popped a piece of chocolate in her mouth, sipped wine, and said, "I used to think I loved him. Now I think I just loved how much he loved me." She looked happy, comfortable, free, like I was the only thing in her life still caged. I closed the laptop. There was nothing else to see, nothing left to shatter. I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a prop, a memory she'd outgrown, a joke passed between lovers like cheap wine at a party. But the worst part wasn't what she did. It was that Andrew never told me. That someone who shared my holidays, my childhood, my blood, looked me in the eyes over dinner and said nothing. This wasn't just betrayal. This was erasure. And now? Now I wanted answers from both of them. But I wouldn't go in swinging. That's what they'd expect. I'd go in soft, careful, quiet. The kind of quiet you hear before something explodes. I didn't scream when I watched the video. I didn't throw my chair or punch the wall or sob into my hands like some tragic husband in a made-for-TV drama. No, I did what I've always done. I sat still and let it soak into me like water into wood. That's my curse. I absorb things. I hold them, let them rot from the inside. But this time, I wasn't going to rot quietly. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't shower. I didn't eat. I just stared at the ceiling while the city lights flickered across my apartment like a broken pulse. I thought about Andrew's face, his smirk, his stupid tailored jackets, how he once told me I was the kind of guy women settle for when they're done chasing. I laughed it off then. He wasn't joking. He never was. I thought about Marin, about the Christmas we adopted the dog, the night she cried watching a documentary about whales, the way she used to trace her finger along my jaw while I read in bed. Was that all theater? Or was I the one who changed? Maybe she loved me, once, in that fleeting, fragile way people love ideas. But eventually, the idea got old. Comfortable. Predictable. Something to be stepped over on the way to whatever excited her next. By morning, I had a plan. Not revenge. Not yet. I wanted something rarer. I wanted honesty, the kind that slips out when people aren't performing. And to get that, I had to become something I hadn't been in years, unpredictable. So I called Andrew. I knew he wouldn't pick up if he saw my name, so I used my work phone, the one I only ever used for VPN issues and password resets. He answered on the third ring, sounding groggy, caught off guard. "Yeah." I didn't say hello. Suite 402. Monday night. I know everything. There was a long silence. I imagined him scrambling, mentally rewinding, calculating how much I actually knew, what I could prove, how loud I might be willing to scream. "Lowell, I hung up. I didn't want excuses. I wanted him cornered. Panicked. That's when the truth drips out, not during arguments, but in the pauses between them. I texted Marin that evening. Short, calm. "We need to talk. Just you and me. Tomorrow. No lies." She replied instantly. "What's going on?" I didn't respond. She followed up 5 minutes later with, "You're scaring me." That made me pause. Scaring her? No. She was trying to flip the script to make herself the victim before the story had even been told. Classic. But I said nothing. Let her sit with it. Let the silence do the work I never could. The next day, I met her at a small cafe near her office. Neutral ground. Public, but not crowded. She arrived early, as always, dressed too nicely for just coffee. Probably rehearsed the whole scene in her head, concerned wife, supportive partner, eager to understand why her fragile little husband was suddenly speaking in riddles. She smiled when I sat down. I didn't smile back. She opened her mouth to speak, and I held up my hand. "I know about Chicago. I know about the hotel. I know about Andrew." She froze. Just like that, still, breath caught, no blinking. Like someone had unplugged her for a second. Then came the twitch in her jaw, the slight repositioning of her bag, the search for an exit that didn't look like running. "Who told you?" Wrong question. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "It's not what you think." Just straight to containment. Damage control. A confession shaped like a chess move. I laughed, quietly. "Does it matter? You weren't exactly careful. I didn't mean for it to happen. You didn't mean to keep doing it for over a year? That's a long time to not mean something." She looked around the cafe like she was suddenly aware of being watched. But no one cared. No one knew us. We were just two more broken people trying to sip lattes over lies. "You don't understand what I was going through." That line. That old, dusty excuse. You know what's wild, Marin? I said. For a year, I thought I was losing my mind. I thought I was the problem. Too boring. Too tired. Too loyal. You made me feel like I was the one who needed to try harder. Tears welled in her eyes. I knew they weren't for me. I never stopped loving you, she whispered. That made me lean in, just slightly. I dropped my voice to a near whisper. You didn't love me. You loved the version of me that didn't ask questions. She started to say something else, another scripted apology. Maybe, but I stood up. I'm not here to forgive you. I'm here to tell you it's over, and that I know what you are. Her face tightened. I left before she could ask what that meant, because I wasn't done yet. There was still one more lie hiding in the shadows. Something even Bree hadn't told me, and I was going to find it, no matter how deep it was buried. I thought ending it with her would feel like closure, like pulling the last thread of a torn sweater and finally tossing it into the fire. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like peeling away a bandage and realizing the wound underneath wasn't healing, it was deeper. Infected. Breathing on its own. The next day, I found myself walking to a place I hadn't planned to return to, the storage unit. It wasn't ours, not officially. It was under her name, registered months before I ever knew she needed extra space for gallery props. I'd only stumbled onto it by accident, in a pile of unopened letters on the kitchen table back when we still shared a kitchen. There'd been a bill from a climate-controlled facility just outside the city. I didn't ask then. I should have. But now? Now I needed to know what she had buried there. The guy at the front desk didn't even blink. Apparently, Marin hadn't updated her emergency contact info. He saw my ID, clicked something, and handed me a temporary badge. Just like that. Like I had every right to walk into that part of her life. Unit 118. The air smelled like cardboard and mothballs. I half expected to find paintings, old furniture, maybe vintage frames she couldn't let go of. What I didn't expect was what I found stacked neatly in the back corner. 5 boxes. All labeled with dates. All sealed tight. I picked one at random, May 2023. Inside were photographs. Hundreds of them. Not art. Not landscapes. Me. Eating dinner. Sitting on the porch. Sleeping on the couch. Walking the dog. Photos taken from angles no phone should have been able to reach. From windows. Through blinds. Some were printed. Others were Polaroids. There was even a series taken from inside the car, my car, of me sitting alone in traffic. At first I thought, surveillance. Maybe she was documenting me for some legal leverage. Maybe she'd been planning a divorce all along and wanted a record of my habits. But it wasn't that. These weren't cold or procedural. They weren't organized in any meaningful way. Some were blurry. Others had small, handwritten notes on the back. He always looks left before unlocking the front door. He sleeps with his hands curled into fists. Does he know I'm there? That last one made me stop breathing. I opened the next box. More photos. More notes. Some receipts from places I hadn't told her I'd been, as if she was checking whether I was lying. There were drawings, too. Little pencil sketches of me, asleep. One of me curled up on the floor during a migraine I'd had last fall. She wasn't even home that day. Or at least, I thought she wasn't. I opened the third box. That's when it hit me. None of these were hers. The handwriting was different. Not Marin's. Smaller. Slanted. Precise. Controlled. I went cold. I sat down on the concrete floor, the walls of the unit closing in like a throat, and tried to make sense of it. She didn't take these. Someone else had. Someone who had access. Someone who had reason to obsess over me, not her. I flipped one of the envelopes over. There was a return label. An address. Apartment number, 2 cities over. Not Marin's address. Not Andrew's. Not even anyone from her work. Breeze. The realization hit me like a dropped elevator. She hadn't just exposed Marin's affair out of revenge. She had been watching us for months. Watching me. I left the unit in a fog. Drove straight to the address without thinking. I wasn't planning to confront her. I just needed to see it. To believe it. That someone I barely remembered had built an entire narrative around my life and inserted herself into it like an author in her own novel. But when I got there, Bree wasn't home. The place was dark, blinds drawn. Mail stacked under the door. But the building manager was outside sweeping the steps, and when I asked, he gave me the answer that turned the ground under me to sand. Bree, he said. Nah, she moved out over a month ago. Left in a hurry. Didn't even take her plants. Why? You looking for her? I told him no. Because I wasn't. Not anymore. I drove home without music. Without blinking. Without touching the wheel harder than I had to. At some point, I realized I didn't just feel betrayed. I felt used. By Marin, by Andrew, by Bree, by whatever sick, circling story they'd all pulled me into like bait in a trap I never saw coming. I was no longer just the forgotten husband. I was the character at the center of a story I never agreed to be in. And the final scene? That was coming soon. Because someone had left one last message on my doorstep. It was waiting for me when I got home. Unmarked envelope. One sentence. Scrawled in that same, tight handwriting. Do you want to know why she picked you? I stared at the note for a long time before opening it. That one sentence, do you want to know why she picked you? Felt like someone breathing directly into my spine. For a second, I didn't even feel angry. I felt exhausted. Like I'd been running through a maze someone else built just to see if I'd ever find the edge. But I opened it. There was no second sentence. Just a folded page, and on it, a photograph. Me and Marin. At a farmer's market, maybe 4 years ago. She's holding a bag of apples. I'm laughing. She's looking at me, but not the way someone looks at a possession. She's looking like she's already somewhere else, planning a new life and deciding whether I'll survive the trip. On the back, more handwriting. She picked you because you're safe. Because you're steady. Because she thought you wouldn't leave when it fell apart. I don't know why that broke me more than anything else. Maybe because it was true. I was steady. I was safe. I didn't leave, not when I should have. I bent myself backward into a shape she could sit comfortably in, and when she got bored, she stood up and walked away. But here's what she never understood. Being steady doesn't mean being weak. It means choosing not to break even when you could. And right then, for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't touched in a long time. Peace. Not because I'd won. There was no winning in this. Not because they apologized. They didn't. And not because I finally had answers. Most of them I probably never would. I felt peace because I realized I didn't care anymore. Not about Bree. Not about Andrew. Not about Marin and her 1,000 masks. What mattered was that I'd stopped pretending. Stopped hoping that the person I loved would come back. She wouldn't. She never existed in the first place, just a version of her I created in my head, like a painting of someone I thought I saw once, long ago. And for the first time, I stopped holding on to that painting. I moved out a week later. New apartment. Smaller. No echoes of old arguments clinging to the walls. I got a new couch. The dog came with me, of course, loyal as ever, as if none of the chaos ever touched him. I started sleeping better. Eating better. Laughing more, sometimes for no reason at all. Real, stupid laughter. The kind that sneaks up on you while you're brushing your teeth or watching birds argue over a cracker outside the window. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. Little essays. Observations. Nothing fancy. But it felt good to create something that wasn't soaked in grief. And then one day, at a bookstore I almost didn't go into, I met someone. Not someone dramatic. Not a whirlwind. Just a quiet smile. Someone who asked questions and actually waited for the answers. Someone who didn't need me to shrink so she could shine. We talked about books. Music. The stupidly overpriced muffins they were selling at the counter. We laughed. I didn't look at my phone once. I'm not calling it fate. I'm not calling it a new chapter. I'm just saying, sometimes, when everything falls apart, it's not the end of your life. It's the end of the lie you were living inside. And when that happens, when the silence finally returns and you're left alone in a world no longer curated for someone else, you finally hear the sound of your own voice again. And if you're lucky, it doesn't sound broken anymore.